the franchise, their annual episode last week. They recorded it, shared it to us live, and there was a ton of information from it. In addition, we got a ton of news over this past week around the 49ers. Recapping all of that in a minute.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Rohan Chakravarthi. That is Marco Martinez, and welcome back to another episode of 49ers Redzone. Marco, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Rohan. How you doing?
Doing good. It's summer. We've got the hot weather out here in California. Definitely enjoying our time, and I know you had a busy 2 weeks so far, but glad to get back and talking with you some 49ers football.
So you say hot weather, but what's your guys' hot weather out there in the Bay Area? Because right now we have hot weather, but it's usually.
For us, I can check right now. Yesterday, I know it hit 100.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it was hot. But the crazy thing, because I was in Wisconsin last week, and there, as crazy as it sounds, it's even hotter than it is out here in the Bay. It was like 100 the entire time when I was out there. It was hot, and it was humid hot as well. So that was crazy.
Yeah, when you're saying hot, I'm thinking like Bay Area hot, like a solid 88 degrees, 90 degrees. But dang,
Yeah,
100 is kind of hot.
I'm at, it says 98 degrees right now. 98.
Right now it is. Oh, actually, I'm actually. If I feel better now, I'm telling 91 degrees today. It was supposed to be 103. Today's only gonna be 94. The rest of the week is 104 up. So, but going back to 49ers football, so the 49ers did just have a fun episode, right? They had the 49ers state of the franchise. There's also been a couple of like rumors or stuff going around. Not, I shouldn't say rumors, but more so talk about what's going to happen with Jimmy G, Baker Mayfield situation, and the Deshaun Watson situation. So let's get to it. Talk to me about let's talk a little bit about the state of the franchise, Rohan.
Yeah, there was a ton of things, right? I think the biggest quote that we heard out of anyone obviously revolved around Trey Lance. Kyle Shanahan raved about Trey Lance. He talked not only about Lance's ability to be the starter this year, but he also said he thinks that Trey Lance doesn't realize how much horsepower he has in him right now, meaning he thinks the sky's the limit. He thinks that he has even more potential than Trey Lance currently believes. And so it just continued the in a way, it continued like the continuous praise for Trey Lance. Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, both of them were there as well. Ayuk called Lance a special quarterback, and both of them just also talked about Lance's abilities as a quarterback, further solidifying the 49ers' notion that Trey Lance will be their starter this year. What do you take away from that?
I thought it was very interesting because not only did Kyle talk about how great of a player Trey Lance was, he went in and he started talking a little bit about how not many people have the mentality and the ability to take a lot of criticism and take stuff like that. So he was talking about Trey, and that's what I got from it. So he talked a little more. He went in so far in depth when he was talking about Trey Lance. They're like, this guy's for sure starting. There's no other way someone could sit here and argue that Jimmy Garoppolo will stay on the 49ers roster and start. This is Trey Lance's team, and it shouldn't be a discussion anymore. The players are saying it, the head coach is saying it, the general manager has said it. This is Trey Lance's team. It's Trey time, and I'm very excited for it because not only were his teammates hyping him up, but his coach finally started raving about him. There's been a very good time where everyone was waiting for Kyle Shanahan to rave about Trey Lance, and no one got that, right. He was like, "Oh, right now our quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo, but Trey Lance is progressing." That's all he would really say. And then now that he went full on rave and went everything in on him, I thought it was very interesting that we finally got to see Kyle Shanahan rave about the quarterback he drafted.
Yeah, definitely. And before we continue, our guy
Did I lose Rohan?
Shout out for coming out. But I'm in the dream. He asks, what do you think will happen at right tackle? Do you think Jalen Moore has a shot at right tackle, or do you think they'll stick with McGlinchey? Now, I think they will stick with McGlinchey if he proves himself to be healthy. However, we don't know if that healthiness, that 100% marker, will come week one, or if that'll come a little later in the season. Now, at right tackle, do I think if McGlinchey isn't available, do they go to Jalen Moore? I don't think so. I think the 49ers have made it clear who they believe could be their right tackle. If it's not McGlinchey, that's Justin Skule, right? You have the chance to put Jalen Moore out there with the first team right now at right tackle, but instead Moore is playing guard, where both of us envisioned he'd play in 2022, while Justin Skule, coming off the torn ACL that he had, is now slotted in as the first team right tackle in practice, where we don't know where Mike McGlinchey will slot in or when he'll slot in as that first team guy when he comes back from injury. Although we do expect him to, at least I do. I think he's the second best offensive lineman currently on the roster. As interesting as it is to say, he is the second best offensive lineman on the roster, given the unknowns of the interior. So I think that McGlinchey does end up starting when he's healthy. But if he isn't healthy to go week one, I think Justin Skule's the guy.
No, yeah, definitely. I think so. It's very interesting because I thought Justin School was for sure a lock at the swing tackle for that injury, and I thought he was very capable of being a starting right tackle for the 49ers, and potentially before they even got Trent Williams, I was even saying like, hey, if Joe Staley retires, this young kid could definitely be a guy who could start at the NFL level. He has the strength, he has the athleticism that Kyle Shanahan likes. Now he didn't have the pass protection that we all want to see from a tackle, right? We want, especially when you want to protect the young quarterback. But the good thing is he's replacing a right tackle. If he does have to start for a few games, he's replacing a right tackle who's very good at run blocking, but isn't the greatest as a pass protector. So that's something that Justin School is. He's a good run blocker, but not the greatest at pass pro. But working with Trent Williams and stuff, that whole offensive line should get better in terms of pass protection, just working alongside Trent Williams. So if they do have to start a right tackle, I think it would be Justin School over Jalen Moore because of the experience he has in that system. And I think they really want to solidify the interior offensive line, and they want to have someone in the at right guard and at left guard in Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore, and have that center position be the main battle. I think that's where battle in camp is the center and right guard position. I don't think we'll see a battle at the right tackle position just yet.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that there will necessarily be a battle. Quick shout out to Leonardo Cruz. Thank you for tuning in. But I don't think that there will be a huge battle, especially with more. On your point about Skule, I think that I agree with that. I think Justin Skule was going to be the swing tackle essentially last year. I thought that Skule was, he essentially did position himself to win that role. I think he's at the moment, I think he'll make the roster, the 53-man roster, maybe over the likes of a guy like Donovan West or Jason Poe, who many people like to have. But for me, Justin Skule, he is positioned to get that role again. The 49ers drafted a ton of interior guys, right? Spencer Burford, Nick Zakelj, both have been slotted in as guard in the early part of the offseason. So that's a telling sign. And the other guy on the tackle side is Colton McKivitz, but the 49ers, it seems they want to keep guys on one side. McKivitz has been strictly on the left side during his 49er career, right? You had him at left guard at times, and then he moved to left tackle. And same with Skule. He's been on the right side for his entirety of his career with the 49ers. So I think that Skule, he'll be the guy that competes with the 49ers, or sorry, with McGlinchey for the 49ers at right tackle if there is a competition. Now, moving forward on the about the state of the franchise, I think that there was another interesting, or not even just one, but a couple of interesting quotes. We'll first talk about the cornerbacks. When Kyle Shanahan was talking about Charvarius Ward, he said that Ward has been better than advertised. He works his tail off. He's a good person, and he has a lot more aspirations than just being a high-paid starting corner in the league. Shanahan furthered, saying that when he watches corners, all I see is man-to-man, because from a receiver standpoint, it's who can we not get open against? Meaning that there's so much more than just playing zone in his mind as a defensive scheme. He wants to pay players to cover, essentially. He says, oh, the zone we play, replacing and tackling and stuff like that, I like it, but he wants to see a corner who can cover. And if he can't, you don't pay for him. And Ward can cover. So to him, he really liked the Ward signing because Ward was a guy who could cover man-to-man. And to me, this solidifies the point that the 49ers are looking to play cover one man a lot more this year. What do you think about the comments about Ward being better than advertised, and also the comments about the defensive philosophy heading into 2022?
Oh no, I definitely love the comments because when you're paying a player or drafting a corner, like a lot of times people get in this mindset, well, this corner can't tackle, this corner can't do this. All I'm looking for in a corner is to be able to match up man to man and take away the best receiver on someone's team. And if you could do that, then you have a legit corner. At the end of the day, the tackling and all the other stuff, playing and being that enforcer in the run game is very, very well suited for guys like the Jalen Ramsey. Like you could have them be that dude, but you're not gonna ask Jalen Ramsey, hey, you're playing the run all the time. Hell not. When you have a guy like a Jalen Ramsey, and I'm not comparing Charvarius Ward to Jalen Ramsey, I'm just comparing when you pay great corners, right? So when you have a good corner, you're not going to ask them to, hey, instead of having you match up man to man, we're going to have you play the run. Hell no. Get on the best receiver, lock him up, take him out of the game, and now you could roll. Essentially, if Charvarius Ward is what Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, and D'Amico Ryans is, you can roll people over to the other side and put him on an island. So I do like the philosophy going into that cover one system that they're going to try to implement. It's going to be very similar, kind of what they ran last year as well. They did run it a lot more than they have in the past. So it's very interesting to see the 49ers going forward with their defensive system, because if you look at what they did for the defensive line, right, they brought in all these pass rushers that have speed. So what that tells me is they are going to go more to that, like you said, that cover one match instead of having that zone, that soft zone that they were playing a few years past. So I'm very excited that D'Amico Ryans, and this has been one of my pet peeves prior to D'Amico Ryans with Robert Saleh, is they go from when they're in man, they're playing great defense, and then they drop into a soft zone and they start getting picked apart, which is oh my god. I feel like I'm lagging. I can't see Rohan smiling or anything, so it just throws me off. Like it literally all Rohan is just like dead looking in the camera. So like for me, it's very, very awkward to talk right now. So my bad. No, but like going into what the 49ers can do with their defense, it's one of those situations where I really, really want the 49ers to start being more aggressive on the defensive front, because what that's going to cause is more interceptions, more forced fumbles on QB sacks. So that is what the 49ers need to be able to move forward to that next level defensively.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I mean, Shanahan did talk about the pass rush, right? He said no one can do it forever on their own. You need a pass rush, you need everything. But I'm really excited to have a guy here that I truly believe is wired to cover guys. And when Shanahan's talking about that, he essentially compiles the entire formula, right? You need the pass rushers to sustain the coverage, and you also need the coverage ability to sustain the pass rush. It's a symbiotic relationship, which is important. And so I think that it's important not only for us to get better corners like we did in Charvarius Ward, but also to maintain the pass rush, which leads me to our next point. Shanahan kind of talked in the state of the franchise about stockpiling defensive linemen, and he talked about the pick of Drake Jackson and how the 49ers, they don't necessarily care if they're having 17, 18 defensive linemen. Talk to me about your perspective on quote unquote stockpiling defensive linemen, and what you think about the Drake Jackson pick specifically in that realm.
So I love that I can actually see you talking now. My internet is finally actually being an internet, so that is great. But I love stockpiling defensive linemen. And the reason is so I'm the kind of guy where if you have great defensive line, your linebackers are much better. So we saw at the beginning of the season when our run defense was very bad because the interior defense line was getting pushed around. It's because that defensive line isn't doing its job to keep those linebackers free. When I mean by keeping your linebackers free, so as a defensive line, and a linebacker, your biggest connection is, okay, hey, you keep me free so I can go make the play. So essentially, these linebackers are getting all this credit. So, for example, Fred Warner, Greenlaw, Aziz Al-Shaair are getting all this credit for making all these tackles in the backfield, making these big splash tackles, right? But realistically, what it is because these defensive linemen are taking on two guys, and they're such enforcers in the run game that they can't get to that second level. So that's why having such a great defensive line not only helps you in the run game, but now going into the pass game. So when you have a legit defense line, we saw when the past couple years we went to this NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, our defensive line had depth the entire game. So we saw them constantly rotating in and out, in and out, in and out, fresh legs throughout the entire game. So during the fourth quarter, when it really matters, and then especially in tight games, you could actually have your best pass rushers on the field without being tired. So I love having 18 guys in camp. Why? Because going into the season, they're not going to have tired legs. They're going to have fresh legs. And that's the most important thing, is getting these guys through camp without getting injured. And if we look at our best position room is 100% our defensive line. We could argue that it could be our receivers now, but 100%, in my opinion, I think it's that defensive line group, and that the 49ers team will go as far as that defensive line will take them.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when you talk about the defensive line, right, John Lynch admitted in the day and age of football, it's set up right now for offense to have so much success. And he believes the equalizer, the great equalizer, is to have a dominant defensive line. And so that's the thing that they've done every year, right? Continue to add to that defensive line. This year, they added it with Drake Jackson and Kalia Davis in the 6th round. And so it doesn't matter necessarily the number of defensive linemen for this 49er team, because what they're doing is adding contributing players, right? They're adding players that can really make an impact. You saw the 8th, 9th, 10th guy on our roster last year, maybe a guy like a Jordan Willis or Charles Omenihu, make game-changing plays at times, right? Jordan Willis had Jordan Willis had 3 sacks last year, but also had the 2 big special teams plays down the line in the playoffs. Charles Omenihu in that Dallas Cowboys game led our team in pressure. He had 6 pressures, 6 of our 22 pressures as a team. He had 6 of those. And so it just shows that these 8th, 9th, and 10 guys can make impacts on our roster, which is an important thing, which is why it's important to stockpile this defensive line. Now, I see this question here. If Jason Verrett stays healthy, do you think this secondary will be elite? Marco, what do you think?
The secondary will legitimately be elite. So what would happen, in my opinion, I think if Jason Verrett's fully healthy and he's back to what he is, and even if he's at 90% what he was of his last year with us, right? So if he's at 90%, I put him outside Emmanuel Moseley inside immediately. What does that do for you? It gives you 2 legit corner ones outside. You got Charvarius Ward, who is very capable of being a corner one, and Jason Verrett, when he's fully healthy, he's easily a top 10 corner in the NFL. So if he's fully healthy, you have 3 very, 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 very solid corners. And I'm saying very, very solid because for me, Emmanuel Moseley isn't there yet as being like that guy. Like, he's not there yet. He's very close, but he's very, very close. So I'm saying you would have a very, very good unit at the corner position. And then going into the second, like even farther back, you have Jimmy Ward at the safety level. So he takes away a lot. He does a lot for a team. Now I'm not going to talk about Hufanga or anything, because we did see him as a rookie. He struggled. He played good. We know what he's capable of doing when he plays very good. He is a very solid corner in terms of being sound. Now, he's not going to be that athletic freak and make these game-saving touchdown interception breakups or whatever, and like plays, but he's going to be a sound safety. So it would definitely make that secondary elite, and it also makes not only the secondary elite. Think about the depth after that, right? Because essentially you could even move if the 49ers want Emmanuel Moseley inside. Now your second string corners become even better because of Jason Verrett being there.
Yeah, and I mean, that would be a very good trio, right? And right now, as it's positioned, I don't think the 49ers will start Jason Verrett on their 53-man roster, for the sole purpose that Jason Verrett, even if he's not 100%, you want to make sure that he's fully healthy to not risk any further injury, especially because he took a risk and came back to the 49ers, which they were thrilled for. In addition, you have 10, really 8, 9, 10 guys in that room that can compete for a 53-man roster spot. Putting him on the short-term IR, or maybe even the physically unable to play list, gives you an extra body for the first couple of weeks for in the season when you might anticipate those injuries happening. Remember, the 49ers were already by week 4 last year, the 49ers had to call on guys like Josh Norman and Drake Kirkpatrick to come in and play valuable roles for the 49ers. So it is important to have those 6 capable bodies to start the year, which I think which is why I think Verrett ends up on one of those lists to begin the year. However, when he comes back healthy, this secondary definitely has the pieces to be elite, right? You have a cover one man situation, which allows both corners on the outside and Ward and Verrett, or Ward and Mosley, whoever it may be, to play at their strong suits, which is in press man coverage, where they're relying on their coverage abilities as opposed to maybe a zone dominant defense, right? You saw it at the beginning of last year when Verrett was healthy, they were trying to run that defense. Additionally, you can have Jimmy Ward over the top, where he's been one of the best slot corner safeties in the NFL, or really one of the best coverage safeties in the NFL over the last couple of years, and then allow Talanoa Hufanga to thrive in a box situation where he can be the tackler that he is and really diagnose plays with his mind, especially having a second year in this defense. And if you want to switch it up, you have the versatility and you have the pieces where you can slide Jimmy Ward inside the box or Jimmy Ward to the slot or something like that, and have another safety, maybe like a Dante Johnson or even a George Odom, if you like his coverage skills, to take over that role there and be a serviceable option. So I think the amount of options that we have, as well as the amount of top tier players that we have, does essentially make this secondary a top 10 secondary when Jason Verrett comes back healthy. Oh, Marco, I think you're muted right now. Can't hear you at the moment. Okay. But until he comes back, let's continue with our there we go.
My mic went on mute. I don't know why.
Perfect. Uh-oh. It went back to mute. All right. But until he comes back, talking about the 49ers and their cornerbacks. So Samuel Womack was obviously a player that the 49ers drafted in the 5th round. And really the 49ers thought that he could be their slot corner. He said in his post-draft press conference that he could be the slot corner, or he envisioned playing a slot corner role. 5'10", around 190, which is exactly the same build as K'Wan Williams when he was a member of the 49ers. And if we return Marco, let's see if the mic works now. Okay, I can hear something.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. But continuing on Womack, right now the biggest opportunity in the 49ers.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Ooh. Okay, we're good. And before I continue with Womack, shout out to Mariah. Thank you for tuning in. But what I was talking about Womack was the 49ers obviously envisioned a role for him, be it in 2022 or 2023. The slot cornerback position is wide open right now. And when we're talking about the amount of bodies, I think carrying Womack and not carrying Darqueze Dennard on this roster, an aging veteran who, while he has outperformed the 49ers' expectations to date, I think it would be better suited for them to carry a different body, perhaps a guy like Tariq Castro-Fields on this roster, who could provide a little more upside, and also protect him from being lost on waivers. Or you could get a different player like a Deontay Johnson, a guy who's been so versatile, right? Maybe not initially on the 53-man roster, but we got Marco on the phone.
Yeah, my freaking my internet's not working. I don't know what it is, so I'm going to the phone so we can have a legit conversation about stuff.
Perfect. But essentially, talking about the cornerback bodies, do you think that Samuel Womack is going to be the slot cornerback essentially starting in 2022, or do you think that that role eventually goes to someone else? Because we talk about Mosley being in the slot, right, when Womack comes in, and so we talk about him coming in. There we go. Are we good now? The mic does not work.
Hold on. All right, can you hear me? I think we're good.
All right. Well, if that gets figured out, we can move on from the Womack situation. I think that he has a chance to compete in 2022 at that slot position, but just given his build, given how he works, and so that might be an interesting thing the 49ers get because you save an extra roster spot if you don't carry Darqueze Dennard, which can be moved. If you think Diamador Lenore has potential, that can be the place where Diamador Lenore gets in. If not, you can use that for maybe another position because the 49ers have so many bodies elsewhere, whereas you don't necessarily need to carry as many corners initially on the roster. But we'll see what they do there. Moving on to talk about the state of the franchise, an interesting point was made by 49ers special teams coach Brian Schneider. Essentially, he talked about Oren Burks, Ray McLeod, and George Odom. Those three were the major signings for the 49ers at the special teams really in the special teams realm. And them three, Brian Schneider talked about how he wanted all three. He thought that they were the best at their positions, and it was a slam dunk to get all three handled. And now we get Marco back in. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I could hear you. I'm staying on my phone. I don't know what it is on my computer. It's probably because my internet has been acting weird the past couple of days, so it's probably what it is. But yes, you're talking about the slot corner. You're talking about Womack, right? So I don't know, right? So Womack is one of those guys he can start immediately. I think he's capable of after watching like at first I didn't like the pick at all. I really did not. I've been watching some of his tape over the past couple of weeks just to see what the 49ers have in him so I could actually talk about him the proper way. And I think he's very capable of being a starting slot corner in the NFL. I just don't think it's immediately. I think they could, in my opinion, what I would do is if Emmanuel Mosley should be starting outside. I don't think Barrett is going to be capable of starting week one. I would actually allow A.B. Thomas and Denominal Lenore, which Denominal Lenore struggled. We talked about that before. But I would allow them to actually compete for that initial slot corner and then have Womack compete with that guy who wins because essentially just handing a starting job to a rookie, even though he might be the better guy at that position, I think it could actually backfire on the 49ers because if there's a rookie on the field, you know what I'm doing. I'm attacking him every single game. And you could break a corner's confidence that way. So I have to for sure know that his confidence is through the roof in order to have him on the roster starting at that nickel corner spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think that is a like that. I think that that's a good argument, right? That you use it like that, and I mean, Womack has the traits like we talked about, the length, the speed, and the size that the 49ers envision at the slot position. It also saves them a roster spot, like I'm talking about. But moving on to the special teams kind of part that I was just mentioning, the 49ers signed Oren Burks, George Odom, and Ray McLeod. And special teams coordinator Brian Schneider talked about how all three of them were kind of at the top of his list. And in his 14 years in the NFL, he's never seen anything where all three of those players, especially because they focus on special teams, ended up signing with the 49ers. What do you make of those comments and how the special teams coordinator is ecstatic and thrilled that the 49ers were able to get all three players in free agency? And what do you think it means for the unit going into 2022?
So I think it's very legit that like the 49ers were capable of make. So I think asking your coaches, hey, who do you guys actually want and how are you going to use them is one of the more important things. It's one of those situations on why the 49ers have been very good at getting guys into the system and having them produce for them. For example, Trent Sherfield, they brought him in as a free agent. He produced immediately for them on special teams. So guys like that, they talk to their coaches and they make sure, how will you use this guy on special teams? How will you use this guy on defense when we bring him in? So bringing those kind of guys in is very key to what you want to do, right? So as Schneider said, those are the three guys he wanted. The fact that he got all three guys is just saying that the 49ers knew that their special teams was atrocious. It was very, very bad last year. There's no worse to put it. You should not have that bad of a special teams when you're that good of a team. And they're going all in on their special teams unit. They understand that if their special teams is good, they probably win more games than they did last year. There were a few games where they lost because their special teams was just bad. And special teams in the playoffs, especially when you're playing championship level football, dictate the games. If everyone remembers, the Los Angeles Rams punter was very damn good, and it wasn't because of him. That special teams unit that the Rams had was actually great punt coverage, which is very weird to be talking about punt coverage and stuff like that. But that's what ends up dictating games. People don't understand. So there, you could look up the percentages on how teams score from each yard line, right? So if a team gets the ball, and this is common sense knowledge, but I've had an argument with someone on Twitter a year ago that it's not that common, I guess. So if you get the ball at your own at your 5 yard line, right, and you're trying to go down and score, you got to march 95 yards down the field. The percentages of you scoring a touchdown drop drastically. The percentage of you scoring a field goal drops drastically. Now, if you get the ball at the 30-yard line, or if you give the team the ball at the 30-yard line, the percentages go up. And even if you get the ball at the 40, it goes up like drastically. Like, it's insane how much it goes up. So that's why special teams is very, very valuable. Even though people don't like special teams, it is super duper valuable to the game of football. And it's one of those ones where we have to actually acknowledge. And I'm glad the 49ers did so with 3 key signings.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. And Kyle Shanahan kind of went in depth, right, in all 3 players. And one thing that we've been pretty high on about is philosophy, right? When you speak philosophy specifically, and real quick before I continue, we've got Tom coming in here. We have the best defense in the league. Because of this, Trey and the offense are essentially playing with house money. Don't turn the ball over, and we go 13-4. Turnovers were a huge thing, right? The 49ers have struggled with turnover margin during the Jimmy Garoppolo era because their defense, while it has played at a high level, hasn't always generated the turnovers necessary, while the offense has committed those turnovers, be it interceptions or fumbles, specifically from the quarterback position. So this is a good point from Tom here. Mariah continues saying, I'm glad they started with the new special teams coach. And that's true because Brian Schneider, I mean, he's been in the division, right? For what he was in the division for like around 10 years, took last year off, but he was a top 10. He housed top 10 special teams units when he was the special teams coach over there in Seattle. So the formula over there definitely works. But to me, when we look at what Kyle Shanahan said, right, in his philosophy, something I've been pretty high on when we talk about 53-man rosters is Kyle Shanahan wanting players that not only play special teams, he wants guys that fit multidimensional roles. The one example I bring up specifically from last year was when the 49ers elected to have Travis Benjamin over Nsimba Webster because Benjamin offered more as a receiver, right? Nsimba Webster struggled sometimes as a receiver, although he was a very good returner. And while Benjamin wasn't necessarily the returner that Webster was, his two-way ability, being special teams and offense, was what got him the roster spot. And then when you look at what Kyle Shanahan said specifically about Oren Burks, he talks about how Burks essentially – or he talks about the linebacker group and how everyone likes their 3 starters of Warner, Alshire, and Greenlaw. But now you've got a guy behind them who, if one of those guys gets hurt, he can come in and play good starting linebacker football. But while he's not doing that, we think we've got one of the best special teams players in the league. And so, I mean, it talks lengths to how the 49ers believe that the guys that they got really can play their respective roles on offense or defense alongside their special teams ability. And one other thing that he said specifically about Ray McLeod, he talked about how when he was first scouting Ray McLeod ahead of free agency, he envisioned Ray McLeod specifically as a receiver, didn't even look at the returner skills. And then when obviously Brian Schneider wanted him as a returner, it made sense to commit to that relationship given McLeod's age and two-way ability. What do you think about that?
So it's going to be very interesting on how they actually use Ray McLeod, right? Because Ray McLeod he hasn't stretched the field in his career, right? So at Clemson, I believe he went to Clemson. At Clemson, he did stretch the field for Clemson. So for the 49ers to bring him on, he has never had, I believe, you guys could double check my stats, but he has never had a reception over 20 yards in his career during the NFL. Now, he was a big play maker at college level, but now pitting yourself with the offensive mind like Kyle Shanahan, as long as you give the ball the guys with speed on the field, you put the ball in their hands, special things happen. look what Kyle Shanahan has done with Deebo Samuel. And I'm not saying he's created Deebo Samuel, but I'm saying look how he uses Deebo Samuel, right? He puts the ball in Deebo Samuel's hands as many ways he possibly can in the backfield. Quick slants, quick bubble screens. He's allowed Deebo Samuel to take it over the top. A lot of crossers. So now, not only do you have a guy with speed, you can line Ray McLeod up anywhere on the offensive field, and now he brings a different threat to the 49ers pass game, run game than we've had before in the 49ers offense. Yes, we could say, well, we've had Raheem Mostert on the field. Well, Raheem Mostert wasn't a receiver. He was a running back. His speed was elite. One of the best pure speeds I've ever seen from the 49ers ever. So going to Ray McLeod, I'm not saying he's going to be faster, but the better receiver realistically the better receiver at taking it over the top is Danny Gray. And that's a player everyone should be excited about because, yes, Ray McLeod might have the edge to start during the season to be that guy who's on the field because of the veteran presence and the ability to learn a system faster. But I think towards the middle of the season is when we're going to see Danny Gray finally take off and be that rookie like, oh, dang, this dude is electric. So I'm very excited to see how the 49ers use Ray McLeod. My guess is they're going to use him on a lot of crossing routes, a lot of end arounds. Feel like they're going to use him over the top to on a lot of clear outs and stuff like that. I don't think they're going to have him be a like number 3 or number 4 receiver. I think they're just going to ask him to be a decoy most of the time. And if Trey Lance gets to that progression, he'll be open and he's probably going to make a lot of yards out of it.
Right. And I mean, based on reports, that was essentially his role in training camp, or not training camp, but in the offseason, right? He was essentially the check down, or the last, the last option. And that's totally fine if the 49ers use McLeod in that role because his speed and his acceleration can work well in that role, right? When he's given room to work with, when he has the entire field ahead of him, when he doesn't necessarily have to worry about drop issues, right, or something like that because of the length of the pass. So you're right. That is definitely something that I can envision Ray McLeod being in, and I would be content if he's in that role and can contribute from that role as well in 2022, while the other receivers fulfill the other roles like the deeps and obviously Ayuk and Samuel doing what they do on the field. Now, Kyle Shanahan talked about the receiver room. He talked about how he feels as good about his wide receiver room as he's felt since the 49ers have been there. Do you think that this is the best receiver room the 49ers have had in the Shanahan era or no?
Easily the best receiving room they've had in the Shanahan era, easily, by far. This receiver room goes back to being the best receiver room in, Michael Crabtree, Anquan Bolden, and that receiving room. That's probably the best receiving room that we've seen since. You have a guy like Deebo Samuel who is a legit receiver, like legit. He could be in the top 5. I personally think he's top 10. I'm not going to put him in the top 5 yet, but you can make the argument that he's a top 5 receiver. And then you have a guy who Brandon Ayuk who showed flashes as a rookie, and then even last year with Trey Lance, he showed that receiver who he should be. So the Kyle Shanahan has 2 legit receivers. And then we're not even talking about Jawan Jennings yet. Jawan Jennings is a very, very underrated player on the 49ers roster. A lot of fans they see the 2 flashy guys, right? They see Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk as the flashy guys, but realistically, having a guy like Jawan Jennings who is capable of keeping drives going on third down, being a red zone threat, and being that big body frame that allows you to go win 50-50 balls, I think Jawan Jennings is going to have a breakout year, and everyone's going to be talking about him as, oh my God, where did this come from? But he's been that guy since he came out of Tennessee. When I did my thread on him when he came out of Tennessee, I thought he should have been playing immediately. I was like, oh my God, this dude needs to play immediately. Unfortunately, injuries got to him his rookie year. So last year was pretty much his second year, but essentially his first. No, that was 2 years ago. So, but his rookie year was taken. What I'm trying to say, his rookie year was taken from him. So that learning curve happened a little bit later for him. So this is finally where we're going to see him take off. And I think the 49er fan base is going to love what they get from Jawan Jennings.
Yeah, and I mean, when you talk about this receiver room, it's not only the best that it's been in terms of top end talent, but also depth, right? The 49ers haven't had a receiver like the top two receiver duo in the Shanahan era since these two, right? When Emmanuel Sanders was here, Debo Samuel was still developing, and there was no Brandon Ayuk. But now that you have Ayuk and Samuel playing at an all pro level, I think this is the best receiver duo that we've had in the Shanahan era to this date. And then you talk about the depth, right? You talk about Juwan Jennings, 5 touchdowns, 282 yards last year when he only really started playing from weeks 9 to 18 after Mohamed Sanu got injured, and he flourished in that role. Then you talk about Danny Gray, who can take the top off of defenses and who has already made his impression on the 49ers defense in practice. River Mcleod, and then whoever the sixth guy is, it can either be a capable receiver from the past, like a Malik Turner, who's caught for 245 yards back in 2019 and has been a special teams player, or it can be an unknown player, like an undrafted rookie, like a Tay Martin, who also has sure hands and who could make his mark on the 49ers, right? So there's a ton of possibilities, but the point is there's a higher top end talent, higher depth, meaning a better receiver room overall. So yeah, I tend to agree with what Shanahan has to say about his group.
And it's very interesting that Shanahan actually talked about that receiving room because what does that say about Kyle Shanahan, right? So Kyle Shanahan has been trying to get his receiving room to look right. So if Kyle Shanahan doesn't start letting the ball rip and take it over, like go crazy in the pass game now, this is his time. He has the best receiving group he's had in a very long time. In my opinion, I think Trey Lance is a better passer than what Jimmy Garoppolo is in terms of he could make every throw on the field. And I'm not saying no knock to Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm just saying he could make every throw on the field that Jimmy Garoppolo probably couldn't have made, right? So I'm talking about the deep out routes that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have the arm strength for, especially for the balls that are deep over the top, something that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't normally do. Now Trey Lance, we've seen him; he'll rifle that in. He's not afraid to do that. So it's one of those ones where this might be finally the time where Kyle Shanahan says, "Let's go," and takes over in the pass game.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I mean, talking about the offense, right, and Kyle Shanahan, there were some interesting comments about the running backs room that Kyle Shanahan talked about. After making his comments on the receivers, he said, our running backs, you saw what Elijah Mitchell did last year. We've got to get him healthier so we can do it more throughout the year. I think Trey Sermon learned a ton in his rookie year, and he's realized, all right, what do I have in this league, and what do I need to improve on? Those two things were interesting because first of all, it signified that Elijah Mitchell was going to have the big role that he had last year, and he wanted more out of Mitchell. Hence, why Mitchell gained the extra pounds that he had did this offseason to try and really shape himself up. But I don't really care about Mitchell. He's old news. What I care about is Trey Sermon, and that Kyle Shanahan name dropped Trey Sermon during the state of the franchise, and really he believes that Trey Sermon can do more now that he has established how the NFL is. And so to me, I thought of Trey Sermon kind of as a lock because of his draft position to make the roster. This furthered that to me. What do you think about the comments of Trey Sermon? And do you think that he really will be featured in the offense this year?
The comments were because Trey Sermon's in much better shape than he was his rookie year. That's
Yeah.
what it is, man. You finally see the explosive step that he has. The even when we go to the nice videos he gives us, right? Because Trey Sermon started putting out videos of him working out. He's in much better shape than he was his rookie year. It's you could see it. His rookie year, he came in. I'm not trying to knock him or anything, but he came in like a rookie. He came in a little bit on the tubbier side, a little bit slower in camp. He looked a little bit slower than he looked in college, and that's no knock. Rookies need to learn how the NFL is, and the fact that he name dropped Trey Sermon is also goes to what I had originally thought Trey Sermon was drafted for. Trey Sermon was drafted for an offense with Trey Lance, and the reason why I say that is because we're going to see Trey Lance more in that shotgun style. I think they're going to put him in a little bit more shotgun, and then with that, and I'm not in Trey Lance is a quarterback who could play under center, 100%. What I'm trying to say is Trey Lance with the running back who is good in the outside zone or inside zone scheme, like Trey Sermon ran in college, you give that threat of the quarterback to hold the edge rusher, the edge just a slightly little bit longer, and it gives you a little bit more to block, right? So that's what Trey Sermon was drafted for. Elijah Mitchell was drafted for when Trey Lance is under center and they're actually running the regular offense. That's what I saw. I think Trey Sermon could do what Elijah Mitchell could do as well, under center and hitting the outside zone. I think his biggest um, learning curve was learning, hey, the NFL, you can't dance. You gotta one cut and go kind of style. Like you just gotta cut and go in this offense. Versus where he was at Ohio State and he was at Oklahoma, he was able to cut, dance, and then kind of like do his little thing. But I think that's the learning curve he learned. The one cut and go in the Kyle Shanahan system will get you 4 to 5 yards every damn time if you're running hard. And I think with the explosiveness he has, the better shape, Kyle Shanahan is looking at him and saying, that's the guy I drafted, even though people thought it was a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, right? Last year he did seem a little out of I mean, he seemed like a rookie, right? And then this year when you see all the offseason workouts, you're seeing well, a lot of running backs that the 49ers are getting, right, are a little bit of the stronger build, a bit of the bigger build in terms of weight, right? Mitchell at 220, TDP around 222, 225, and then a guy that's been a camp standout in Jordan Mason around 220 as well. So really those guys are on the bigger side. But then you see Trey Sermon. I forget what exactly he weighed at, but I think it was near the 200 range
Yeah,
when he
two
came
plus.
in. Yeah, something like that. So he was near that range this season. So he's cut down a bit, become a little more leaner, but also gained the explosiveness while also recouping the explosiveness and the strength really. And so he's become a little more in shape heading into this year. And like how Shanahan said, now that Trey Sermon kind of knows the NFL environment, seems like he's primed for a bigger role than he had last year, which isn't saying much, but still, I think that Trey Sermon does make the roster. And with the 49ers' reliance on younger backs and trying to get fresh legs to keep guys sustainable for the 16-game season, especially because you got a guy coming in as a rookie and also a guy who played in only 10 games last year, I think that Trey Sermon does get a little bit of a bigger role this year in the offense.
So you mentioned you name dropped the rookie, right? Now, do you think that rookie's gonna make the roster? Because I'll be honest with you, I think he does. I really do. The
About
other
Jordan,
guy, yeah, Jordan Mason. I think the only guy he's really competing with is Jeff Wilson. But
yeah,
Jeff Wilson's cap hit, it's not nothing major. It's only a 945. It's pretty much $1 million cap hit, which is very capable of doing if you're going to keep a young rookie who you have long term control for and cheap for about 4 to 5 years, right? You have that little wiggle room where you could eventually like sort of the restricted free agent and stuff like that. So you have that wiggle room to have a cheap running back for a little while. Do you think he's making the roster, or do you think Jeff Wilson is a for sure lock to make the roster?
I think this one's tough. I definitely don't think Jeff Wilson's a for sure lock. I think he needs to show that he's back to his former self following the Achilles, or I think it was an Achilles. I think he needs to show that he's back to his former self because last year he was a bit inefficient. He only rushed for 3.7 yards per carry, only had 80 carries, and really was a non factor down the season. But it also could have been the 49ers just trying to keep him healthy for this year. That could have been a factor. But to me, it depends on, I think it doesn't matter because I think both players the 49ers hope that both players remain a factor in this team. So to them, I think it's not necessarily who's the better player, but who do they think they can sneak onto the practice squad? That's how I view it, really, not necessarily who do I think should make the roster. Because if it's up to me, I would pick Jordan Mason. I think he's younger. I think he fits more what Anthony Lynn wants, which is specifically for this season. And I think that he provides fresher legs, really, just to be honest. He provides a pass catching option out of the backfield, which the 49ers have lacked in seasons past. He provides a bigger body, meaning he could be more sustainable and really like he can go the length of the season, and he doesn't have the injury history that Jeff Wilson Jr. does. But then again, if the 49ers believe that they can stash Mason on the practice squad and just elevate him on game days on that 55-man roster should they need to, or add when a guy gets injured, then I think that Jeff Wilson Jr. makes a roster if they believe that. So it is a tough decision to me. I think that this one's going to be close. And really, I asked Jamal actually this question on Twitter the other day. If Jeff Wilson Jr., if the 49ers waive him to try and make him on the practice squad, does he get claimed? Jamal did think that Jeff Wilson Jr. does get claimed. And to me, I think that I agree. I think he does get claimed. So it is, to me, it's the question isn't necessarily on Jeff Wilson Jr., but it is, do the 49ers believe or can they afford to waive Jordan Mason to make him on the practice squad? Or do they think that they'll lose him when they do so? because if they think they'll lose him, then you essentially just have to pick one or the other. But if they think they can keep Mason, then you move him to the practice squad and have him play from there as a protected player.
So, I mean, you could probably stash Mason, right? But the thing is are you going to risk it? Because at the end of the day, I think what Jordan Mason's doing in camp and everything, he's showing, or not camp, but mini camp and OTAs, he's showing he's a capable runner. He's physical. I do know that based on watching Georgia Tech's film and not like watching him exactly, but I was watching a linebacker, and I was watching him a little bit because I'm that linebacker I'm actually trying to get an interview with. So I was watching that linebacker and everything. And Jordan Mason just kept popping up every time they would go to offense. And I was watching their offense just because he's there. And he's a very, 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 very physical runner. He broke 44% of every time he ran, he broke almost a tackle every time. So he was 44% of his rushes, he broke at least one tackle, which is very insane.
Yeah.
Now, some will throw out like Marshawn Lynch. He's a 6'1", 218. He runs like that physical presence. But the reason why I think you keep a guy like Jordan Mason is because, for example, I'm not trying to say any players are going to get injured, but if you look at the 49ers, the way their roster is built, you have Elijah Mitchell, you have Davis. I cannot think of his first name.
Price?
Yes, Davis Price, and you have Jeff Wilson. Jordan Mason actually matches Price, and I think Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon are a mix of a little bit of both in a way. They both run physical and they have that explosion. So I think you try to keep another running back who is very similar to Price on the roster, and I think that's Jordan Mason. I would keep Jordan Mason over Jeff Wilson if I had to choose, only because not only are you getting a cheaper player down the road, you're getting a younger player who you can have on your roster for a few years, and Jordan Mason plays special teams, so you can't discount that. You kind of get, I don't know if you guys remember, you get a guy like Anthony Dixon in a central way who was a physical runner, and Anthony Dixon, I'm not trying to compare the two, like to be exact, but I'm saying Anthony Dixon was a physical runner, and he played special teams and provided that special team presence for the team. So maybe Jordan Mason could do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the case. And I mean, I like the intrigue of Mason to the point where I definitely wouldn't mind rostering him on the 53-man roster. The 49ers, I think they're a little more cautious, right? Because they tried the practice squad stash last year with one of their linebackers, Justin Hilliard, their premier the premier guy that they signed out of the draft class. They tried stashing him and the New York Giants claimed him. So if they want to try that again, it'll be a risk. But players do tend to be claimed off the 49ers. And you never know, but you don't want him ending up in the hands of Seattle. That's the thing I'll say just to point out there, because Seattle right now has a pretty damn good running, or really the one thing that's going for them is their running game. They've got Rashad Penny. They drafted Ken Walker, and they'd like to add to that running back room. And I mean, if Chris Carson really can't go anymore, if that neck issue is gone, they'll have an extra running back spot. And Jordan Mason could be right there. And, if Seattle gets his hands on him, that would be a mistake for the 49ers.
But you know who for sure is 100% getting claimed by Seattle if he's cut?
Who?
Not Jordan Mason, Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson, that's what they're going to look at Jeff Wilson like, that's our guy. So like if they were both to get cut, they're going after Jeff Wilson, not Jordan Mason, which is funny. Like that's what they would end up doing.
That's true. And I mean, that just points out that it'll be a tough decision to make come like 53-man time. And it all comes down to training camp, right? Which one responds the best when pads are put on, when there's an actual defense there with are there surefire hands? Because I do think that you're right in that you want running backs that match each other so that schematically it works out better, especially with how complex the offense is. And I think both of them can be pass catchers right at times. Jeff Wilson Jr. had 13 catches for 133 yards, but really wasn't the best pass catcher back in 2020. He only caught his passes 46.4% of the time. Jordan Mason seems to be a little more of a surefire pass catcher, which might provide him the edge, given that Anthony Lynn likes not only physical backs, but he also likes the type that can pass catch. You just see DeAndre Swift, you see Austin Eckler, right? So that's kind of his mold of a pass catching back when he's trying to run a sufficient offense. So that does provide, in my opinion, the edge to Jordan Mason. But we'll see as training camp comes along.
Was there anything else, Rohan, about the state of the franchise that caught your eye or caught your attention?
Yeah, there's one quote really, and I personally took the time out of my day to write the article about it, and that was John Lynch talking when they were talking about the defensive philosophy and Drake Jackson. John Lynch said we stayed pat because there were players that we liked at every pick. When he was talking about how the 49ers didn't make a single trade, which was the first time in the Shanahan Lynch era. He said we stayed pat. That's a cool thing when a plan comes together. There were some fun moments in the draft, some not so fun, like when a player we really wanted was there and someone jumped us. But that happens in every draft. And looking back, there was really only one instance in the early rounds where the 49ers were jumped, and it was a headline on the day of the draft. That was at pick 60, where the Cincinnati Bengals traded up 10 spots to select Cam Taylor-Britt, the defensive back out of Nebraska, who had safety flexibility. Remember, on draft day, the 49ers did believe that that slot corner and safety position was a big need. Do you think or what do you really just take of that quote? Did the 49ers want Cam Taylor-Britt at 61 over Drake Jackson?
No, I think that's more so a general manager being a general manager.
Yeah.
I think this was the perfect draft for the Shanahan era not to make any trades, like not
Yeah.
to make any trades up or down or anything. Because if this draft was honestly being realistic, like this draft favored the 49ers where their draft picks were and everything like that. So it was more so late second round to like early fifth heavy. So like they favored the 49ers because they had a lot of picks in that range rather than start trading up and trying to get more picks or trading down to get more. No, you already have about 9 picks. They believe they had 9 picks. So doing all the extra stuff would have actually hurt their draft capital, in my opinion. So I like that they stayed pat, and I love that they got Drake Jackson at 61 because Drake Jackson was a guy I thought was going to go from around 40 to 50. So getting him at 61 was a hell of a pick.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when you talk about the trading back philosophy, we saw actually a ton of this draft. Obviously, we didn't, 49er fans maybe didn't recognize because it wasn't our team, but a lot of teams were getting fleeced in these trades, especially when teams were trading up or when they were trading up, they had to give up a ton of capital to trade up in this draft. And it's indicative of the draft class, right? That it was strong in those middle rounds where people wanted to trade up, but it was a lot of capital to give up. And so for the 49ers, despite having 9 picks, it did make sense, like in hindsight, for them not to trade up because of how much capital it required to trade up. And that would have left them without one of their slots. And when you look at it, their sixth round and then their fifth round, that might be one of their better contributors, right? You talked about Samuel Womack, who might have one of the bigger roles for the 49ers, a guy that most people now are excited about heading into 2022. He might not have a bigger role in 2022, but he almost assuredly should have a bigger role in 2023 should his development continue. And then you talk about in the sixth round, Tariq Castro-Fields, a guy with all the traits that you want, and then Kalia Davis, a guy who the 49ers could see as their potential DJ Jones replacement in the future should Javon Kinlaw not work out or something like that. But yeah, that was mainly the last talking point for me.
No, that Davis, and you brought up a pick that I absolutely love. The Davis pick was absolutely a steal,
Yeah,
absolute steal. Like, when he's healthy, he is a bowling ball that you cannot block. I mean, the run game, he is legit in the run game, but I also think in the pass game he provides more than what DJ Jones provided. And for me, I think the Davis pick once he's healthy, I think he should be back. I would put him on the pup list. He should be good to start the season, but I would put him on the pup list. Let him get another a month or so, and then bring him back and let him be fully healthy before he comes back. Because I already know if he comes back and he's not 100% and he's not playing, you know how the 49ers fan base is going to be. He is a bust, like immediately. Like they're not gonna let him play a snap. They're gonna start calling him a bust. And then Kalia Davis might go on social media and talk about how he has bigger cojones than people and stuff like that. They just throw it out there like you gotta let the guys play before we start saying stuff, right? So um, I think we had a good episode, especially talking about the state of the franchise after my internet finally I decided to go to the phone. I don't know what it is about the internet, but next time for sure my internet will not be that bad.
and yeah, we talked all about state of the franchise, talked about all the topics, offense, defense, coaching staff, and all the different things that really occurred during state of the franchise. The one thing I'll say though, it was very, very interesting. The state of the franchise, they did not like market it at all. They just released it on a random Wednesday. the only reason that I knew it was released because 2 weeks before I heard from Greg Papa that they were recording it the Wednesday before, which was very interesting that they, first of all, didn't not all the season ticket holders went. I think they had a select few go. And that was the very interesting part. 49ers marketing team is a strange part of the offseason this year. No Trey Lance earlier in the offseason, and now this. It's an interesting part. Thank
And
you.
it was very interesting because normally they have it live where everyone could watch live, right? So like everyone's talking about it live. I didn't see the state of the franchise until like 2 to 3 days after it came out. So I was like, oh man, like whoa, I'm this far behind. Like normally I'm watching it live. What the heck, man? But that was very interesting. It was very interesting from the marketing team. And I actually liked it because it was like, hey, 49ers fan base, shut up. Like stop talking smack. Like, shut up here. Boom. Like right in your face. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. All of you guys that commented in the chat and those of you guys listening, be sure to check us out on all the other platforms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify as well, I believe. And be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're continuing to grow. We're continuing to put out videos for you guys, and we will be back soon. Training camp is, I think, in about a month from now.
About a
And
month.
yeah, by training camp, I think we'd expect Debo Samuel negotiations to be done. Maybe even Nick Bosa might get a contract, so a ton of extra news is going to be coming from here and then. As always, be sure to subscribe, be sure to like, all that good stuff, and we will catch you guys next time.